Welcome back to Waking Mad. I'm Ben Bruce, and I have the pleasure of talking to Karen Joy today. Now, Karen is the author of a wonderful book, Other Lives, Other Realms.
That's right, that's it.
And this is the book, and this is Karen. Now, just to introduce you, Karen, you're also a psychologist.
Yes.
And you actually practice psychology under a different name.
That's right, yeah.
And this is because this field that you've written about here, and I believe you also practice in,
Yes.
is esoteric.
That's right.
And as a result, it needs to be partitioned or delineated really with a different identity, a different name.
That's right. That's what I've done. I've got to use it a different name to do the psychology as I do from the esoteric practice, which is about regressions, as we're going to explore.
Regressions. So it's obviously quite provocative for the status quo, conservative bodies.
It's not mainstream.
Yeah.
We would say it's not yet evidence-based.
Yeah.
I am on a research committee for the Institute, Michael Newton Institute.
Michael Newton, yes.
Yes. On that committee, and we are doing research at the moment.
Yes.
That we hope will show the efficacy of this particular modality.
Yeah.
But obviously it's got a way to go before it's accepted into mainstream, and it's not accepted at this point.
So hopefully this regression therapy and minutiae around it could be actually accepted by the powers that be.
Eventually. But obviously a lot of research has to be done. The institutions, universities, they stick to what is rewarded, and this sort of work is not rewarded, it's not acknowledged. Even sex therapy is not rewarded very much. So one professor told me he wouldn't recommend his students even do that, so let alone doing regression into the past life or life between lives. That isn't going to be accepted at this point. So it's going to take a long time.
I as a psychologist, I discontinued my affiliation with APS.
Uh-huh.
And this might be provocative, but I just found it terribly boring.
Well, there is a transpersonal group there. I was talking to actually the guy who runs it,
Yeah.
the APS transpersonal.
Well, I'm sure he's not boring.
Well, he was here today, and he's
Well,
not boring. And he's not boring.
But you know what I mean? Like,
But
I love the
generally,
cognitive behavioural therapy and so on. It's very good. Change your mind, change your reality. These, medication can be good. So cognitive behaviour therapy and interpersonal therapy can be good. But obviously, if you have specific issues, problems, like, an anxiety or a malaise that seems to come from something that you can't even remember in this lifetime, or you've had what seems to be a decent, wonderful upbringing and so on, and you've still got these strange symptomatologies, then we need help in that area, don't we?
Well, you've taken me into an area, you've taken me along into why I got into this.
Excellent.
And that's because I did have a client who I spent quite a while going through all of her childhood issues, working through them. Yes, there was some stuff there, but she still had the same compulsion, which was to help people all the time. She always had to be helping people. And her husband came to this session where, in frustration, I sort of said to her, look, just lie back and go into this emotion. And then I said to her, what would happen if you stopped helping people? And she was I hadn't put her in a trance or anything, but she was in in that emotion, and she said, they might die. Now, she was helping them sewing and things like that. So it's pretty obvious that they weren't going to die. So it wasn't logical. But I got her to go in, what do you mean? And we went in, and she was suddenly in a village. She said it was different era, different clothing and everything. And what was happening then, somebody came and said, the marauders are coming. So there's some barbarians or marauders coming to the town, and she hid them in the barn, like a barn, under straw and everything, and the marauders came and killed them all. And she died carrying that feeling that she had to rescue people. She'd failed, and she had this sense that she had needed to keep rescuing people.
Almost like a guilt.
Guilt.
So was this in a hypnosis?
No, that's what I'm saying. I suppose some people might call it an affective bridge, where you emotional bridge, because I took her into the emotion, like the fear of not helping, and she said they might die. So she it bridged into that. It wasn't what I expected,
But it wasn't done in trance, it was done just in conversation.
Well, she was leaning back in the chair, and she had her eyes closed, because I said, just close your eyes and go into that emotion, like feel it. Just feel the emotion. Now, I've had this happen hundreds of times now.
To really
with people.
focus on the feeling.
Just feel the feeling, where it is in the body, what it feels like. And then I asked the question, what would happen? And she said, I might die. So, of course, then we did a release on that, because she realised as she's coming out of it, when I say coming out of it, a lot of tears, a lot of grief. And when she's coming out, she sort of said, oh, well, maybe it wouldn't matter what I did or where I hid them. Like, they might have died. So she sort of started to realise that it didn't matter.
Had some
Her
processing.
Processed
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Her responsibility
Yeah.
was dissipated. And that made a difference. She wasn't as compulsive. She never, like, she didn't come back. Actually, she lives down the road from me now, and I've spoken to her several times, and she's not as she was then. She doesn't have to help people with the same sort of compulsion she had. So it did make a difference.
Excellent.
This is many years ago, like 15 or so, maybe even longer. I don't know, about that long ago.
And you were doing conventional
I was
psychological
conventional psychology
Yep.
when that happened, and then I gradually started to do that effective bridge. Now that's allowed. I wasn't taking people into past lives deliberately or anything like that. But yes, I was allowing people to go into the emotion, and if they came up with scenarios, that was fine. One person came was a doctor, and she had abandonment issues, and I got her to go into the same process. She didn't believe in anything esoteric, absolutely at all.
Materialist reductionist.
Very materialist doctor, scientific and all that.
Bit of an occupational hazard, I think.
That's right. That's right. And so she went in, and this abandonment issue,
Yeah.
she had this image. I said, well, just go with whatever comes up. Go into the feeling and then go with whatever comes up. She did that. And she's had this scenario, story, whatever you want to call it, come up where she was a young girl, and her parents had all died, and she was feeling totally isolated and alone, and this sense of abandonment was there. So when she again, a lot of tears, a lot of emotion with this, a lot of release, and then when she was sort of, when I say coming out of it, like opening her eyes, and it is like being in a trance then. I think people do go into a trance, but it's not an inducted trance the way you normally do. And so then when she's coming out of it, she says to me, that was strange. And I said, oh, what was strange about it? She said, they were all in period costume. All the characters in the story. I said, what do you attribute that to? She said, I used to like reading books of that era.
Jane Austen or something.
Sorry?
Like Jane Austen.
Yeah. I used to like to read those books.
Yeah.
So she was satisfied with that. I was satisfied with that. Off we went. So I'm just saying that even
Like an intrusive sort of thing.
No,
like
I'm not
memory
going to.
changed.
I'm not going to. The therapy's been done,
Yeah.
but she doesn't have to change her paradigm.
No.
The therapy's been done. She's been released.
Yeah.
She was fine. She went off. I've seen her since.
That's really interesting, actually, that you don't have to actually share a paradigm with someone. You can work with their paradigm.
That's right.
Because at the end of the day,
right.
it seems to be about tracing the issue back to whatever almost free associates. And if there's a big narrative there and what have you, it's almost just like telling the story.
Yes.
And then the release is facilitated.
Well, the release, the story helped, and then the emotional release. Like, I think people do that in their current life when they're re-triggered with a similar, say they've got a past life issue, and then something happens in this life, say a loss, and then they lose somebody or an animal or something, and then they have that overreaction. And if they do the grief and release that, perhaps they're releasing the past life thing as well. I don't know. I don't know whether that's true or not, probably, but who knows. But
as long as it helps.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's the bottom line, is as long as it helps.
Yeah.
So that's where I got into that.
You can't dissect everything and know with 100% confidence what the construct actually means or is.
Yes.
So that's that positivism sort of bracket, and you can't really do that. It's always going to be a little bit of interpretation, and you've got to flesh it out, and you're never going to know exactly, because it's very subjective, right. And this is intersubjective, isn't it?
Very subjective, and she was triggered. So there's a couple of examples where that happened, and after that, then I started to do that work with people. If someone would say, I think it's a past life. That's fine, as long as you're not taking, with the psychology side of it, as long as you're not taking into a past life, which I never did. But I did a regression, a life between life regression.
Okay.
With somebody, and then I sort of got the feeling I should do that work, so I did go and study that. I had already done a lot of past life and hypnotherapy stuff. So then because when that happened to me with that lady who was helping people, I did go and study it then, so I at least knew what I was doing. But I didn't use it in that that way. I used it in the way I explained, where it was quite legal as a psychologist to do. But eventually I decided I wanted to do more of actually taking people into past lives and into the so-called afterlife or life between lives. They use various names for it. And that's what I did. So then I needed to set up a separate business, because that is not a part of psychology. It's not evidence-based, like I said, in the way that they would require.
I think that's a wonderful way to get around the powers that be, just as subjectivity is a part of this, is that it comes down to the terms you use.
Exactly.
If we're talking about, cognition, well, that's really about events occurring in the mind. And that's quite broad.
Yes, it's very much. Very much.
And if I'm using the term interpersonal, which is about relationship, well, I don't have to necessarily describe past interpersonal relationships and past lives.
No.
Yet still it's a relational experience.
That's right.
And the idea of projection, there are terms that we can use to fit within the parameters, I think.
Well, it seems to be, as long as we're not deliberately taking people or, convincing them that there's past lives, or trying to get them to do a past life when they don't believe in past lives. We've got to work with their belief system, their context. Yeah. As long as you're doing that, you're okay.
I enjoy that term, the open-minded skeptic.
Yes.
And still being scientific, even if you're interested in spiritual or altered states of consciousness or what have you. We can still be quite disciplined with the way that we approach it. I understand that the other side of this is that there's that fear of cult, thinking, or getting people into a religion or something like that. Like you're a recruiter for the Nazi party or something like that. And that's happened before. That's an abuse of that power.
Absolutely.
So we can see the reason for the protocols and the policies,
exactly.
And I do understand that. But obviously, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a healthy therapy or a helpful therapy that you can do. Then I suppose it's about tweaking it so it fits in to some degree.
Yes, that's right. Well, like I said, I'm moving out of psychology anyway into more of the hypnotherapy and regression work. And having done many, many regressions now, I'm starting to see patterns of behaviour there. And so then or patterns of processes, I don't know. But so then I wanted to report that. That's why I wrote this book, what's happening. So this is about stories of people who've had past lives and life between lives, and they've been life-changing experiences. So when I say life-changing, I mean like in near-death experiences, where they've had a lot of the same sensations and information as you get in a near-death experience. And having that, then this is an ordered process. You don't have to go and get yourself half killed or virtually killed to do it. You can do it just by using hypnosis, regressing back into the past life, and then in the life between life, where you meet your guides and your higher self and get that lovely connection and love and everything, and a whole lot of information about your purpose and stuff. Not everybody's meant to do that, by the way. Like there's only some of your people who are watching this will feel, maybe that's for me and want to investigate it. Others just aren't interested. It's not right for them. It's part of their path, or it isn't. So I'm never trying to get anybody to do it who, you never convince anybody to do it. You just let people know it's available. And
is there a danger from doing this?
None that I've ever seen.
You've ever had like an abreactive thing going on?
You have abreactions, all right. Like you go through a death experience where there's been a trapped experience.
Sure.
A death experience, and then you go through the emotions of releasing that and going through that. So that's like an abreaction. You re-experience a past life. You actually experience it being with.
I probably used the wrong term there. I probably should use the word re-traumatise or something.
Well, it is.
Do you ever find them decompensating after the session and being unable to function?
No, nothing like that.
Exactly the opposite. Hallucinations.
The opposite.
So you get a resolution.
They get resolution.
Well, that's enough for me.
It's resolution.
So is it okay, Karen, if you explain it in a nutshell, if you will, how you actually do a past life regression therapy? How
I take the rest of the therapeutic side of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Michael Newton. I belong to the Newton Institute, as I said, and that institute has high ethics. He was a clinical psychologist himself, Michael Newton, and he's very fussy about who does it. It took me a couple of years even to be able to do their training. So that's who I would recommend. So when you say is there any danger, not with our practitioners, definitely not, because we adhere to these protocols. But yes, so you take the person into a trance, like into a hypnotic trance. They're very aware while they're doing that, while they're in that trance. It's like being in a movie. I always explain like being in a movie where you're in the theatre, but you're not focused on that. So you're in a room, you've got a guide there, you're there, but you're focused on what's happening inside. So you're taken down this process where we take them through childhood just to get used to that, and reporting. Remember, they're reporting their experiences. So I'm guiding them in, and then we go through the womb. Often there's interesting things happen there.
This is using hypnotic induction?
Hypnotic, just you're going down. So think of it as regressing. It's a regression backwards. In time.
So let's go further back,
That's right.
And are you using a trance induction method in particular?
Yes, you are. You're using relaxation, and then you're giving certain instructions, like Michael Newton's instructions specifically, that help to enhance the experience.
Okay.
Then you're going down, regressing through to childhood, and you take them to stop a couple of stops in childhood with very neutral memories to help them get used to, as I said, reporting and having the experience, building their confidence.
Yeah.
It's all about confidence and being open. And then going through the womb. And remember, as in the womb, you still have a memory of that experience, even though you were not verbal, but you're experiencing that now through your adult comprehensive mind. So you'll use terminology that your adult uses as adult. So again, it's like being in the movie, being part of the movie, but still reporting what's happening. So then you go further down, then you take them into a past life. So just through a transition. Usually they use a tunnel, like you can use other things, but that's the typical one. But we create that. And then they go into the past life. They go through the past life. Often a lot of fascinating information comes up in that past life. Then they die. Now, then they die. Sometimes there's stuff that has to be resolved there. So, as I said, it can be traumatic. Often not. And then they die, and then they go to the life between life. Now, around about then, they start meeting their guide. Now, once they meet their guide, I'm reporting, I'm facilitating, but I'm not leading anymore at all, because the guide is doing that then.
So the guide appears in the session?
The guide appears. Well, when I say appears...
Interacts, always there.
In the movie that the person is experiencing, if you like. I'm going to use the word movie, if that's all right.
That's good. So everyone has a guide in that LBL state?
Some people have it. It's a light. Sometimes they get a voice. Sometimes they see somebody. Then they might go and meet their soul group, for example, and they might recognise some of them. Some of them, people who are still alive, they might recognise them, some they won't.
So that person in their life now was incarnated back then in that life with them too?
Yes, they may be alive on the planet now and they still meet them there. It's like, I guess, what some people would call the higher self, or there's this part of you still on the afterlife.
Okay, so right.
So remember, you're a soul.
In several places at once.
Yeah, you're a soul having a physical experience. So you've got a manifestation here as a physical body. Some of that energy is here, but then the main energy is still in the so-called between life. So if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then they will go where they need to go. Like I've had people go to where they selected their body selection. Some of them are in the book, by the way.
In the life between life state, Karen, is the person actually making a choice as to where they want to incarnate in the next life?
Well, first of all, they've died, so they've got to be rejuvenated. Some of them have had lives where they're really exhausted, so they go through a little process of that quite often. And then they may decide that they may go to somewhere where they get a whole lot of information from elders. Now, sometimes the guide will tell them, or they just get it, as I said, directly. Just depends. Everyone's different. And then, but they'll get information, and they will have had a list of questions so that's the intention. It's been set for. I should have mentioned it earlier, but there is an intention. They are trying to get something out of this, like
almost ceremoniously, in making an intention. I'm doing this for this reason.
Yeah, well, we just do that like we're talking now, and talk about what you want, and you might say, well, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm meant to be or what I'm meant to be doing, or I've had a relationship breakup and I'm devastated, and I've just got a feeling I need to come and talk to you. All those sorts of situations. Sometimes people come because they've lost somebody and they want to meet them, and that happens. That's moving. That is so amazing, because they re-experience that connection with that.
And why do you think people would select past life regression or life between life hypnosis when they've had, say, a trauma, a breakup, a health problem, or what have you, as a form of therapy.
Rather than going to...
conventional psychiatry, psychology.
It's interesting. Most people just get an intuition that that's what they should do.
They're drawn to it.
They're drawn to it.
Right. Okay.
And I always say to people, if people are watching this now and they feel, maybe that's for me. If you ignore that, you'll get another reminder somewhere.
It's almost like Anthony Peake talks about the daemon and the eidolon, and the daemon being the higher self.
That's it.
That may be having a quantum past life review right now. I mean, this gets pretty trippy. The English language struggles, I think. But the daemon might actually push you. You might have a higher self sort of intuition where I need to do that. I don't know why, but I want to go see Karen. I don't know why, but I'm going to go see her. Is that?
Yes, that's exactly it. And then
that can be very strong. That feeling.
If they get that, they might get it strong. They might get it light. But if they get it light and they don't, and they ignore it, they'll keep getting nudged. It'll keep nudging them. So,
and when people go through this past life regression work, do they tend to be, living their lives more openly, or do they seem to be more them?
Afterwards?
Yes.
Absolutely. Like
it's growth.
It's growth. In this book, I had some people come who I thought I always make notes. I do certain things that some therapists don't do, but I make notes they can take away. I suggest they read them and go through them, because they've got to integrate the information. So they go through this esoteric experience, which is a bit mind-blowing, and then they can go back to their old lives. It's easy enough to do. People do that. So I just make some suggestions that they integrate that information. And
integration is the key, I think.
We do. The Newton Institute very much encourages that integration. I try to facilitate that as much as I can by making notes through as well as a recording. But what's interesting is that there's a couple of people who I used for the book, and I thought they wouldn't have done that. They were really off track. And when I rang them up to check, they were fine. They had shifted. They'd changed. So that was great.
I think that would be the hallmark of a well seasoned, experienced, qualified practitioner. That you wouldn't just have the phenomenal experience and then isn't it wonderful? You would have the integration as to what that means now and how that affects you now, and then what that could do now, for
That's
you
what it's
in this
about.
life.
That's what it's about. We're not interested in people. We're not interested in people who just want to know, was I, somebody famous? Cleopatra. Actually, I've got a chapter in here called "Not Cleopatra."
Not Cleopatra.
Because it's not.
Well, we can't all be Cleopatra.
We have ordinary lives, but
I was, but not everyone can be. I'm only kidding.
We have ordinary lives which are extraordinary in their own way,
Yes.
and those.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with that.
They're the ones that make the difference.
Yeah.
They're those lives, reliving them and going through them, or releasing, and then finding out what you're meant to be doing and how you got stuck, and some of the patterns over your lives about what you're working on. That's what makes the difference.
I'm doing a past life regression myself for the first time next Tuesday.
Great.
And I organised this before coming to this conference, the Afterlife Explorers Conference, and looking forward to it. I'll see how it goes. I might have to look you up and give you a call or something.
Just make
sure it's integrated.
Happy to. It's just about being open, and like a lot of people during the process think, this is weird. I'm making this up. I just say, let's just keep going and let it make sense later. Sometimes it makes sense after. I had one chap who had a past life regression, waited a year to integrate that before he came back for his between life regression, and now it's another year and he's about to do another regression.
Needed some time to just let it
integrate
sink in.
And let it sink in.
Now,
it's profound.
Where is your practice located, Karen?
I'm in Brisbane.
Okay.
I have got people travelling to see me at the moment, because of the book.
Yeah.
I have done a couple of Skype ones. That I prefer not to do them, but I have done them and they've been really successful. In fact, one chap in Dubai said he's done 3, mine was the 3rd, and he thought that was the best one, and the others were face to face. So it can still be done.
I wonder how past life regression therapy would go in an Islamic culture.
Yeah, he was in Dubai.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, he had an Islamic name.
No wonder he's Skyping you, is what I'm saying.
Maybe.
I don't know if it would be good for them
well,
to do
he was really happy with it, so I was happy with it. Yeah, but I'm just saying, I don't know.
But some cultures prohibit to this sort of thing, don't they?
Well, the Newton Institute are doing training at the moment or very soon in India.
Yeah.
And there's 200 practitioners, 250 I think, around the world, and they're in 25 countries. So, and we've had done 20,000 regressions. Because I'm on that research committee, we've just done some research on that. So we've done 20,000 worldwide. At least 20,000 at the moment.
Okay, now Karen, I'd love to talk to you longer, but we are out of time.
That's great.
Where can people find your book?
Well, it is in some esoteric bookstores. You can go to my website, lifebetweenlives.regression.com.au, lifebetweenlives.regression.com.au. We're on Facebook as well. KarenJoy.com.au will find me as well.
So they can make contact with you.
Yes.
Should they wish therapy or purchase your book?
Yeah, I'd love them to go to bookstores and ask for it. That would be even better for me, of course, because we've got a distributor here, and the distributor is Phoenix. And yeah, so it should be in the esoteric bookstores. I'd like it to get in the mainstream bookstores because I'd like people to know that it's available for those people who are meant to do it.
Well, thanks for joining us, Karen.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ben.
And this is Waking Mad, the Consciousness Project. I'm Ben Bruce. Thank you for joining us. And if you've enjoyed today's discussion, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. All the best.